This is just another Monster Hunter video I've made quickly to help explain a little bit of what the Hunter's notes are in the game. I won't go into too much detail, there's plenty of videos online right now that get into the specific math for it, but the simplest explanations can help people understand a lot more than maybe going into detail can sometimes. So starting off, the Hunter's notes are in the game and they provide information on monsters you hunted, captured, or encountered. This ranges from large monsters, small monsters, and even the endemic life like the spirit birds that give you your buffs. So if you go to your Hunter's Notes, that's in your Info tab, you go over to the third tab on your menu, access the Hunter's Notes, and the most valuable information for you will be under the Large Monsters tab. When you click the Large Monsters tab, it'll give you a list of the monsters you've encountered, and it will give you information on them such as the biggest size of the one you've encountered, the smallest size of the one you've encountered, their threat level, how many you've hunted or captured, what type of wyvern they are. So in the case of the Great Azuchi here, it's the bird wyvern. Now it'll also show the habitats you can find them in, and it'll give you a little blurb of information. When you go to the next tab on Hunter's Notes, you'll see the Physiology, and this is important for people who really want to get into the damage and what to use against the monsters. So when you hit the Great Azuchi, you can hit it in the head, its torso, its foreleg, its tail, or the tip of its tail, the stinger. And then you'll have it split into the different damage types you can deal to it in the game. So you'll have slashing, blunt, and shot, fire, water, electric, ice, and dragon. Now, the numbers here, the bigger the number, the more effective that damage is on that part. Without going into the details about how much damage it really equals, it's just easy to understand this by looking at this and seeing that if it's a higher number, it does more damage. Elemental damage is a bonus on top of that. So if you have a slashing damage weapon that does water damage, it'll do a lot of slashing damage, and it'll do increased water damage or increased shock damage. Now, in this case, if you look at the Great Azuchi, dragon damage is the least effective elemental damage against the Great Azuchi. Shot damage always tends to do less, but remember that you can hit shot damage at a distance, and usually it comes out faster than your melee weapons, with the exception of dual blades. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the Hunter's Notes. So you'll often find that different weapons will do different damage to different parts of the body, with tails often taking more damage from severing. In the case of the Great Azuchi, the tip actually takes more damage from blunt than severing, but the tail itself takes more damage from severing than blunt. So keep that in mind when you're attacking your monsters. Always consult your Hunter's Notes, it's quite helpful. The next page down is the ailments page. This will show what ailments they're most susceptible to if you like to play with those. So in the case of the Great Azuchi, 3 stars is going to be, well, in all cases, the higher the bar and the more stars you have, the more effective that will be. So the Great Azuchi is very weak and susceptible to poison, paralysis, sleep, and exhaust. A little bit less to stun, blast, and thunder blight. And it's still effective but not significantly to do fire blight, water blight, or ice blight. Sometimes there won't be a star at all, then you'll know it's not very effective at all. Finally, the most important page here, the materials page, because we need this for gear. This will show what you can get from the monster. It will also show, if you expand it by pressing A, it will show what percentage you will get these pieces at based on what you do with them. So if you look at here, it's very important to note that the capture rewards column and the carves column are mutually exclusive. So that means you can't get a capture reward and a carve reward at the same time, with one exception. If the part of a monster can come off, for example a tail that can be severed, you can get a carve reward from the tail, but only from the tail. So the Great Azuchi does not have a carvable tail. However, if we look at the Royal Ludrov, this will be the first monster you encounter whose tail comes off. When we look at the materials here, you'll see the Royal Ludrov tail. You can get it from 6% chance when you just beat it in one way or another. There's always a 6% chance of getting the tail. If you capture it, you get a 16% chance at getting the tail. And if you break the tail, you don't get anything for it because the tail can't break, it comes off. So if the tail comes off, you have to carve it, and that'll give you a 70% chance of getting the tail. So if you want to get the tail from the Great Ludrov, the best bet is to actually cut the tail off and carve it. Then capture the Ludrov and finish the mission. Then you'll get a roll on the 6% column, the 16% column, and the 70% column. On something like a Rathian has some tail stuff going on. So the Rathian spike comes from the tail. You have a 40% chance of carving the Rathian spike from the tail when you sever it off, and you have a 5% from carving from the body when it's dead. But if you capture it, you won't get a tail at all, unless you've done one of those two things. So the best bet for the Rathian spike is to cut the tail off, win the mission for the 7% chance, and you'll lose the 5% chance for carving from the body, but 5% compared to 40% is a significant difference. Like, it's not valuable to go for that 5%. So that's going to be the best bets here. Also, there's a breaking the part. So if you break Rathian's back, you have a 70% chance of getting the tail spike. So those are some good ways to look at the Hunter's notes here. These do stack, right? It's just that if you capture them, you can't carve them. The body. You can't carve the body. So for things like the Rathian Ruby, for example, if you capture it, you have a 3% chance of getting it. You also have a 3% chance of getting it from carving the tail. You only have a 1% chance of carving the body, so you're better off cutting the tail off of the Rathian and then capturing it for your best chance of a Rathian Ruby. I hope that helped explain the Hunter's Notes a little bit for people that are new to the game. There are videos out there with more details and what exactly those damage numbers mean, but honestly, I think that especially if you're a new player, it's best to focus on having fun with the game and using your favorite weapons, while basically understanding where to get your parts from before you get into the numbers. Thanks for watching.